Welcome viewers, brace yourselves for a reality check on survival in the wake of a catastrophic event. Today, we're plunging into the cold, unforgiving waters of hard truth. This isn't just a wake-up call, it's a siren in the night, alerting you to the fact that when the SHTF, 90% of people will not survive the first year. Yes, you heard it right, 90%. We all like to think that we're prepared for anything. We've got our stockpiles, our bug-out bags, our escape routes, but the bitter reality is that most of us are woefully unprepared for what's to come. Overestimation of preparedness is a common pitfall, and it's often the first step towards disaster. Many of us believe that we have enough supplies to last until stability returns, but the grim reality is that many stockpiles won't last more than 2 weeks. And then there's the issue of reactive versus proactive preparing. Many of us only start to prepare when we see the storm clouds gathering. But what happens when there's no warning? When an EMP attack, a cyber attack on the power grid, or an unexpected declaration of war gives us no time for last-minute preparations, critical supply shortages are another overlooked factor. You might have food stockpiled, but do you have a sustainable way to cook it? Do you have multiple cooking options, or are you relying on a single fuel source? And what about water access? If you have a well, what happens when the power goes out and the electric pumps stop working? Next, we have the lack of skills and knowledge. Survival isn't just about what you have, it's about what you know. Many preppers fail to acquire essential skills such as basic carpentry for repairs, medical training for injuries, and the ability to adapt to unforeseen challenges. Lastly, there's the unpreparedness to bug out. Having a bug-out bag ready is only the first step. What's often missing is a viable plan to leave the city effectively when SHTF. So, stay tuned as we delve deep into these issues and discuss how to overcome them. Because knowing the truth is the first step towards survival. Many people believe they are well prepared for any eventuality. However, the truth is often starkly different. It's easy to overestimate our readiness, to think we've got it all figured out. But let's dig deeper into this common misconception. One of the biggest pitfalls is overestimating how long our supplies will last. Sure, we might have a pantry full of canned goods, but what happens when those run out? Most stockpiles won't last more than 2 weeks, and that's being generous. We're talking about a long-term survival scenario here, folks, not just a temporary power outage. And speaking of power outages, what about heat? It's one thing to have a stockpile of firewood, but what happens when that runs out? And what if the crisis happens in the middle of winter? We often underestimate how much fuel we need to stay warm, and that can be a fatal mistake. Then there's water. Many preppers believe they're set with a well on their property, but what happens when the power goes out? That well pump won't work without electricity, and unless you've got a hand pump installed, you're going to be without water. And let's not even get started on the people who think a case of bottled water is enough to get them through. We also tend to overlook the small things. Things like can openers, for example. Sure, you've got a pantry full of canned goods, but if you don't have a manual can opener to open them, you're going to be in a world of hurt. And what about sanitation? Most preppers focus on food, water, and heat, but forget about the importance of staying clean. Without proper sanitation, disease can spread rapidly, turning a bad situation into a deadly one. Preparedness is about more than just stockpiling supplies. It's about being ready for anything. It's about understanding that the world we know can change in an instant, and we need to be prepared to adapt. It's about realizing that survival isn't just about what you have, but what you know and what you can do. And most importantly, it's about understanding that overestimation can be the difference between life and death. The danger of unanticipated events is real and often overlooked. That's where we find a stark difference between reactive and proactive preparing. Survival doesn't live in the realm of reacting, it thrives in the domain of proactivity. Typically, when we hear of an incoming storm, a blizzard, or a heat wave, we prepare. We stock up on essentials, protect our homes, and brace for impact. This is reactive preparing, responding to a known threat with a timeline. But what about those threats that don't knock on our doors before arriving, those events that strike without warning? Imagine a sudden EMP attack, a cyber attack on the power grid, or an unexpected declaration of war. These are scenarios where there's no time for last-minute preparations, no chance to react. That's where proactive preparing comes into play. It's about considering those what-ifs that don't come with a warning. It's about planning for the unexpected, the unanticipated. Proactive preparing is the mindset of always thinking a step ahead, of always being ready no matter what comes our way. Think of it as a chess game. Reactive preparing is like responding to your opponent's moves. It's essential, yes, but it's not enough. Proactive preparing, on the other hand, is like strategizing, anticipating your opponent's moves, and planning your own accordingly. It's about controlling the game, not just playing it. So how do we become proactive preppers? We start by understanding the potential threats, no matter how unlikely they seem. We plan, we prepare, and we practice. We build our skills, gather our resources, and always stay vigilant. Because when disaster strikes without warning, there's no time for reaction. There's only time for action, and that action comes from proactive preparation. In the end, preparation is not just about reacting to warnings, but also about anticipating unforeseen events. Because survival isn't about how well we react, it's about how well we anticipate and prepare. Always remember, when it comes to survival, it's better to be a year early than a minute late. Having supplies is important, but sustaining them is crucial. Let's delve into the critical supply shortages that often go overlooked until it's too late. First, let's talk about food. You've got a pantry full of canned goods and dry staples, but have you thought about how you're going to cook all of it? When the power grid fails, your electric stove becomes a large, useless appliance. So you turn to your camping stove. But what happens when the propane runs out? Having multiple cooking options is key. Consider alternatives like solar ovens, or even the age-old method of cooking over an open fire. Now let's talk about water. For those with a well, it's easy to assume that water access is secure. But have you thought about what happens when the power goes out and the electric pumps stop working? Gravity-fed systems and manual pumps can provide a solution, but only if you've planned for it. Finally, let's address heating and fuel shortages. A cold winter night can quickly turn deadly without a reliable heat source. Many assume they have enough firewood or fuel to last through the winter. But when the days turn into weeks, and the weeks into months, the reality can be chilling. The key here is to think in terms of sustainability. A single fuel source might not be enough. Explore alternatives like coal, peat, or even biomass briquettes. And remember, insulation is just as crucial. Blankets, sleeping bags, and even reflective emergency blankets can help retain heat and keep you warm when the fuel runs out. What we're trying to underscore here is the importance of planning for the long haul. It's not just about having enough supplies to last a few days or even a few weeks. It's about ensuring you have the means to sustain those supplies and by extension your survival over an extended period. Survival is not just about having supplies, but about being able to sustain them. After all, in the harsh reality of a post-catastrophe world, the difference between life and death often comes down to preparedness and how far you've thought ahead. Survival is not just about what you have, but about what you know. Picture a world where your stocked pantry and water supply are your only lifelines, and yet, they're not enough. The truth is, survival requires a unique skill set that many of us, unfortunately, lack. This isn't just about knowing how to start a fire or build a shelter, it's about understanding the basic principles of survival, such as navigation, first aid, and food preservation. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the skills gap. Many preppers are well stocked with food, water, and supplies, but what about the knowledge to maintain these resources? Can you repair a broken shelter, treat a serious injury, preserve food without refrigeration? These are skills that can't be stockpiled, but learned and practiced. Without them, even the most prepared amongst us may falter when disaster strikes. But it's not just about the skills we lack, it's also about the conveniences we're accustomed to. We live in an era defined by technology and convenience. From GPS navigation to electric appliances, we're surrounded by tools that make life easier but may not be available post-collapse. Imagine a world without smartphones, without electricity. Can you navigate using a compass and a map? Can you cook a meal without an electric stove or microwave? These are skills our ancestors took for granted, but many of us have never had to learn. The harsh reality is that our dependency on modern conveniences has left us vulnerable. When these tools are stripped away, many of us will be left scrambling, unsure of how to adapt to a world that is suddenly unfamiliar. The truth is, being prepared for a post-collapse world is about more than just stockpiling supplies. It's about cultivating knowledge and skills that can help us adapt to whatever challenges we may face. It's about learning to survive without the conveniences we take for granted. So, as we navigate this journey of preparedness together, let's remember this crucial lesson. Knowledge and adaptability are as crucial to survival as supplies. Having a bug-out bag is only the first step to preparedness, but let's face it, when the world around us is collapsing, it's not just about what you've packed, It's about where you're going, how you're getting there, and what you will do once you arrive. Let's talk about the realities of bugging out. Picture this, the alarm sounds, and it's time to leave. You've got your bag, but what's next? Many people imagine they'll just hop in the car and drive to safety. But in a true SHTF situation, the roads will be gridlocked, fuel will be scarce, and that handy GPS might be nothing more than a paperweight. Therefore, it's essential to have a well-thought-out evacuation route that includes alternatives for unexpected obstacles. And what about your destination? Is it a remote cabin, a friend's farm, or a designated community shelter? Remember, a bug-out location isn't just a place on a map, it's a haven that needs to be stocked and ready to sustain you. If you haven't prepared it in advance, you might arrive to find it as inhospitable as the place you left behind. Now, let's address the common oversight of not tailoring bug-out gear. A pre-made bug-out bag might seem like a good idea, but it's unlikely to cover all your unique needs. You need to personalize your gear. Do you have any medical conditions that require medication? Do you wear glasses or contacts? Are you prepared for the specific climate of your bug-out location? Without considering these personal factors, your bug-out bag might be full of gear that's useless, while missing items that could be life-saving. In conclusion, bugging out is more than just grabbing a bag and running. It requires a comprehensive plan, personalized gear, and a clear understanding of your destination. Remember, survival is about more than just having a plan. It's about being able to execute it. Survival is not a destination, but a journey. And this journey is not just about having supplies and gear, it's about having the right mindset, the correct knowledge, and the ability to adapt. Throughout this video, we've unraveled some unsettling truths about survival when SHTF. We've talked about how easy it is to overestimate our level of preparedness, believing that our stockpiles of food, water, and fuel will last us until stability returns. But the reality is, in a real SHTF situation, many of these stockpiles won't last more than 2 weeks. We've also explored the dangers of being reactive rather than proactive. Many of us only prepare for emergencies when we get warnings. But what if there's no warning? An EMP attack, a cyber attack on the power grid, or an unexpected declaration of war can occur without any notice, leaving us vulnerable and unprepared. We've delved into the critical supply shortages that can occur in a post-collapse world. We've highlighted the importance of having multiple cooking options, secure water access, and enough fuel for heating. We've discussed the skills most preppers fail to acquire. The ability to do basic carpentry for repairs, medical training for injuries, and the ability to adapt to unforeseen challenges will be crucial in a post-collapse world. And finally, we've examined the realities of bugging out. Having a bug-out bag ready is just the first step. What's often missing is a viable plan to leave the city effectively when SHTF. Survival is not just about being prepared. It's about being prepared to adapt. It's about being proactive, not reactive. It's about having the skills, the knowledge, and the mindset to face any challenge that comes our way. So let's take the lessons we've learned today and start taking action. Let's start preparing not just for survival, but for thriving in a post-collapse world. Let's start preparing for the journey, not the destination. Remember, survival is not just about being prepared, it's about being prepared to adapt.